Running camp should be about people, not paperwork. UltraCamp helps you manage staff, registration, and communication in one place, so you spend less time on tasks and more on camp. Find out more at ultracampmanagement.com/campcode.
Welcome to Camp Code, the podcast that explores what it takes to create great staff training so you can create incredible summer camp leaders. I'm today's guest, Kate Taylor.
Yes, you are. Hi, Kate. Today we have a really fun episode, and it was really inspired by conversation with you, me, Ruby, past bosses, current bosses, and being bosses ourselves. Do you want to tell us a little bit more what we're going to be chatting about today?
Yeah, what it basically boils down to is that we're talking about how to be a boss that doesn't suck. These are
Yes.
all tips that you can definitely pass on to your leadership team as they take their first steps in being supervisors, but they're also hopefully helpful reminders to all of us as camp directors that we need to not be sucky bosses too. Welcome to Camp Code, sorry, I'll pause on that one. Okay. Welcome to Camp Code, a podcast brought to you by Go Camp Pro. We've been podcasting for 11 seasons and knew we needed to continue. Why? Because just like people grow and change, so does our industry. So here we are, ready to discuss new challenges, new ways of handling situations, new advice from those doing the work, and new ideas to help us all do our jobs better. Our commitment to intentional leadership training just grows stronger every year. Gab's usual co-host Beth is unable to podcast with us today, so you're getting a Gabs and Kate hang with some tidbits from Ruby by proxy.
You did that so great, Kate. I'm so appreciative that you're here, and I'll introduce myself. My name is Gabs. My pronouns are she, her, elle, and I'm one of the camp directors of Camp Woro. Camp Woro is an all-girls camp with gender minorities, and we practice creating a positive environment. How about you, Kate? Tell us a little bit more about yourself.
For sure. I'm Kate Taylor. My pronouns are also she, her, elle, and I am currently a camp consultant with Stéphane Richard Development Consulting, and I am the executive director at the Brome Lake Boating Club in Knowlton, Quebec.
You are indeed. So we had a really great conversation. We said, we should talk about this. Can you kick it off for us, Kate? What's one of your things to help future bosses, current bosses be on a path that's building trust with their staff?
For sure. I think the number one thing that I have noticed as a boss myself is that the thing that our staff are appreciating more and more and more is transparency and honesty. So, like, being able to have a little bit of a behind the scenes view of what am I doing on the day to day so that they know I'm just not sitting in the office twiddling my thumbs all the time. Then they're out on the field doing all the work. And also that transparency of, this is why these decisions are being made, not just here's the decision, you make it happen, but here's what went into this decision and why it's maybe not the most perfect thing that you might have thought of, or here's why there might be a constraint on the budget for this brilliant idea that you had. So unfortunately, we won't be able to do it. My staff have really said that they appreciate how honest I am being with them, and it makes them feel like they actually know me a lot better and that they understand what I do in my job.
Yeah, and I would say you've been doing that for quite a while before it was like a kind of maybe a more popular thing to do. I think it's always been in your nature. I had a dinner with friends the other night, and one of the things that they were doing was showing their new staff members. I think they're in marketing, so it's a little bit different than the camping world, but showing their new staff members their calendar to say, hey, this is what I do. And that was so new to her, like to have to do that. But the trust piece is really important. We're not saying that boundaries can't exist. Of course they can, but transparency, I also agree, that's very helpful. And when we're being transparent, let's be transparent with ourselves. I was going to say some of us need, that sounded off. Most of us, all of us need a little bit of mental health care. And I think when we're thinking about being a good boss, a supportive boss, a kind boss, a boss that knows where to put boundaries, a boss that knows how to step back, how to step in, all of these things that we want to try to be able to do. It's a lot of pressure. It can feel really, really lonely. and making sure that you have a support system for yourself, for your brain, for processing things that you're going through during the summertime or throughout the year, I find is very helpful. So my next one is, try to take care of your mental health. I'm an advocate for therapy that works for me. And I like to always
Big
say,
fan. Big fan.
everybody benefits from at Camp Waro when I go to therapy.
When I think like even if you can't afford therapy or if you don't have access to it for whatever reason, I know in the States it's not necessarily as accessible on people's health
Hmm.
insurance. Have a support network, have someone you can
Yes.
vent to. Like I remember you used to have like a best friend that you would call up and be
Hmm.
like, you know stuff about camp, but you don't know these people. So I'm going to tell you
Yes.
all of the people that are annoying me, and you're going to tell me I'm not the crazy one here.
Yeah.
Um, because sometimes you just do start to feel a little bit like you're the crazy one, and you need that reality check
Yeah,
outside.
100%. And having that friend that can hold space for you just as
Hmm.
important. But so bringing people in, especially when you feel vulnerable, being able to be vulnerable with somebody is a really wonderful way of gaining some perspective and also maybe not taking it out on some of your staff members. Um, I think also one of the things that Ruby mentioned was following through. I
Yes.
know in my younger years that's something I really struggled with, and I wouldn't say that I'm don't struggle now. I just know I really have to make it a priority and make effort to follow through. I'm a very great in the moment type of boss. If there's an emergency or we
Hmm.
need to problem solve something, be creative, I'm there. I amazing. I will say it. I'm great. But
Hmm.
if there is a can we talk later situation or can,
Hmm.
the following up piece I always struggled with. So Kate, there's something that you do to help with your follow through.
Yeah, I honestly, right from my first supervisor job at Waro, when I was senior unit head, I would tell my staff, like, if you don't see me writing this down, what you're telling me right now, I'm not going to remember. And this is not, I'm not trying to put the onus on you to like do all of the admin of this, but like tell me to write it down. Like if you think this is an important thing and you want to talk about it later, be like, Kate, write this down and then tell me the thing. So then I know to like write it down in my notebook and I'll have it in front of my face later.
Yeah, and you're really good at once you do that, you are going to follow through. That person's not coming back to you like two, three, four times afterwards, and then with that, accountability buddies are really, really helpful, and uh, it is essential for building trust. And so I know personally it's something I struggled with, but when I was younger, I really had a hard time when I was a young leader, and now older, I have systems, but I loved that
Hmm.
Ruby brought that up.
Yeah, and the follow through definitely is like number one trust builder. If your
Yeah.
staff see that when you say something you do it, or when you say something you promise them something,
Hmm.
um, it happens. It really does a lot. Like your
Yep.
actions and your words are matching up.
Yep. That's why they say, under promise, over deliver, right?
So we're going to take a brief pause for some messages from our sponsors, and we'll be right back.
For Camp Code listeners, unlock UltraCamp's operations checklist for new directors, a free download to help you prepare for a smooth season. Find it at ultracampmanagement.com/campcode. Running camp comes with countless moving parts. UltraCamp helps you stay on top of them. Organize activities and daily schedules, manage wait lists and cabin assignments, automate billing and payments, centralize all camper and staff info in one place. With UltraCamp, camp operations run smoother, so directors can lead with confidence. Book your free customized demo at ultracampmanagement.com/campcode.
All right, Kate. So we talked about following through. We talked about a whole bunch of other things. What
Mhm.
else, through your experience, do you find has really helped you be a better boss?
Well, so we have always done like 360-degree evals. This was a new term that I found when I was working for a large organization of the YMCA. Um, but a 360 eval is basically you're getting feedback from your supervisor, but you're also getting feedback from the people you supervise. So if you're someone who oversees staff, you're getting it from both directions. So that your staff can give you feedback about how you're doing as their supervisor, and what they need more from you. And I remember like when we started a new staff evaluation program in like the greater YMCA with like the year-round staff, I asked the question to the HR team, like, where is the supervisor feedback portion in this? Like, where are my employees getting to tell my supervisor how I'm doing for them so that he has a better idea of whether I'm a good boss or not? And they were like, oh, well, no, people can't handle that type of responsibility. Like that takes a lot of maturity to be able to do that. And I was like, I mean, I do it with my camp staff every year. So I think if you give them the
Yeah.
tools, they're gonna do it.
Yeah.
But like that was the best way for me to improve as a supervisor, was that my staff were telling me, this is what you're doing that's good bossing. This is what you're doing that's unhelpful. Like it
Yep.
was game changer.
And there's some and there's ways of doing it too. Like I'm not a fan of anonymous because then we can't go back and check in with the person, but you do have to if you're going to be non-anonymous, then you do need a system, So for my leadership team, that goes to me and they don't see that. And then for myself, that goes to one of our operations teammates. So it's not a perfect system, but the how you're also building trust in that process. But then it goes back to the follow through that we were talking about before. What are some things that you can address? I know that some people that are resistant to it, it's more like, is there a flex? What if there's a flex of request that I can't, that's unreasonable. And then that's where you can take time and craft your message on and do that transparency piece that Kate was talking
Yeah,
about.
it's the dialogue about it
Yeah.
of like, what you're asking of me is not reasonable because
Yeah.
like this is the constraints that I'm working with, and this is why I'm not going to be able to meet that, and I apologize or whatever it is. But like, you know, explaining a little bit, having that conversation
Mm-hmm.
is really helpful.
So good. I love it. Thanks for bringing that one up. For
Mhm.
me, it's a sentence that I got from our HR consultant, Diane Dubé. She was on a podcast with Beth and I, two podcasts actually. And there's a sentence that she taught me that I'm using more and more when I'm having tough conversations with a staff member, which is the story I'm telling myself. So I had a staff member. I'm going to say something that's not exactly true, but sort of close to the truth. Got it. Um, Came out of a cabin and their staff are not allowed to be in each other's cabins. And she was seen by a leadership team member. And when I approached that staff member to talk about how come she was in that cabin, um, she just said, I wasn't in the cabin. So this was sort of, and so what do you do with this sort of situation? And basically what Diane said, the story I'm telling myself when I hear you say that you weren't in the cabin is that you feel embarrassed or you don't want to get in trouble. And I understand that because you really care about camp, but it's important for us to have an honest conversation so we can move forward from this. And so it allows me to empathize, and it allows me to let the person in and say, can you tell me your story? Like what actually was happening? And it's the same when, if somebody's really being defensive, and you're trying to give them feedback and you say, I'm sensing a lot of defensiveness. This is telling me, et cetera, et cetera. Obviously, I don't use it all the time, but I find when I'm having a really hard time with a staff member in a conversation and the energy goes up, that one sentence allows me to express how I'm experiencing the moment.
Yeah, and I think the important thing there is obviously you can't base that off of like the story I'm telling myself is based on all these feelings that you
Right.
have. It's focusing on like what are the facts? Like the
Yeah, yeah,
fact
yeah.
is person X saw person Y
Mm-hmm.
exiting doorway. Person Y says, "Nope, wasn't there." The story I'm telling myself is blah, blah, blah. Like you
Exactly.
you can't necessarily just be like the story I'm telling myself is you're lying,
No.
and really you
No.
gotta practice figuring out what those phrases are gonna look like.
Yeah, absolutely. Did you have another one that Ruby had mentioned?
I did. So Ruby talked about admin goggles, and I thought that was a
Mm,
really
oh,
cool
yes.
concept. So, we all have, camp goggles that we wear where like everything becomes blurry and weird, and the only reason we think that it's normal is because we're at camp. And if you were anywhere else in the world, it wouldn't be normal. So her concept of admin goggles is like getting too shuttered and blinded by the big picture. So we as the year-round staff, we know everything that's going on. We know the budget that we're having to adhere to. We know the camp communications that are going out. We know the parent phone calls that we're getting. We know all of this extra detail that our frontline staff are not getting. So, and our leadership team might know a portion of that bigger picture that might start to cloud their judgment. So when they're approaching a staff member about some piece of feedback that they need to give, they might need to take a little bit of a step back and remember that that staff member doesn't have the full picture, and they're not making
Mm-hmm.
those decisions wearing those admin goggles. They don't know the whole behind the scenes. Um, so you can't give them feedback based on, well, why would you do this? We need this and this and this to happen. They
Mm-hmm.
don't know that this needs to happen. So you need to reframe your criticism or your critical eye sometimes on like, you know what? We can take a step into the smaller picture rather than taking a step
Mm-hmm.
back and looking at the big picture. Step into the small picture for a second and remember that this is how they're seeing things.
100%. And if you ever get to do the role of a counselor, like sit during a mealtime and just stay at that table and not get up, or, just spend time with their kids, just recentering to what they're going through is so helpful for perspective. And but also maybe gets you out of your office. And that's also really nice too. Um,
For
I have
sure.
last one I can add to the pile. Um, this is something I picked up from you, Kate, but it's giving credit where credit is due. And I think that sometimes when we're sitting around table with a lot of group discussion and a lot of ideas can be made collectively, but there's always a bud that starts somewhere. And I've I've found that if you can say to other people, Susie really came up with this great idea and we ran with it and look how awesome it is. That doesn't only build trust between you and that person, but it builds confidence in the team and it role models that we're successful when we celebrate each other. And I think that as a boss, you can get into the oopsie habit of sometimes not necessarily taking credit for not your work, but forgetting that the efforts of others might be small,
Hmm.
and that's just because they're young and don't have as much as experience as you do. But if you can give
Yeah.
them credit where credit is due, it really creates nice links. And then for myself, when I do that, it gets me into the habit of looking for things that staff are doing. So try to
Yeah.
give credit where credit is due, I think is such an easy way to connect with your staff.
Yeah. And I think that like positive feedback is always nice to hear,
Yeah.
but like having a shout out in a different way of like,
Hmm.
oh, this really cool idea that Susie had, we're going to implement it because XYZ, we've been able to make it work. But thank you, Susie, for, having this idea to start this process off. That's going to give Susie a lot of confidence that like, oh yeah, I'm a smart person. I have great
100%.
ideas
Yep.
and I'm gonna keep working on those.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
Do you have a last one for us, perhaps, Kate?
For sure, for sure.
Yay.
My big one is that like a lot of people when they come into an organization where things have gotten a little bit slack, there might be a temptation to like lower your own standards to meet people where they are. But I think that that's doing everybody a disservice. I think that if you come in with high standards and like gives people something to rise to, then they're much more likely to actually do it. Um, there's a lot of, flack that Gen Z gets these days about being like, you know, they don't want to do as much work
Hmm.
and blah, 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 blah.
Right.
I think that they have not been held accountable to work.
Mm,
I don't think that they've been treated like they can do work,
right.
because when you give them a sandbox to work in and you say, this is the type of thing that I'm expecting from you and this is why, um, they're ready to go. They want to be better people. They want to improve themselves. They want the opportunity to develop their professional skills. So you just have to give them that chance.
I love that. It's like confident encouragement. You're just coming in and you're saying, I get it. It's tough. Let's do it. We can do it. And that comes with experience too. If you're connected and you have a good relationship with your staff, as well as you understand the job, being able to hold people to a higher standards is a wonderful thing. And maybe, I think Kate and I have both are here because we were held to higher standards in some ways, but also
Absolutely.
very much, yes, very much encouraged too. It is that time of the show where we recap. Well, I feel very lucky because I feel like I've recapped this a couple of times when we chatted with Ruby and then we talked about doing the show. And now we're doing the show. So here we go. Starting with Kate, look at transparency. Everybody, when you're having a bad day, let them in on the little secret. When schedule needs to change, bring them the why. When we need new uniforms, let them know like that where you outsource them from. All of this is really helpful information for your staff. Your staff just want to know the story and they also just want to get to know you. So transparency. And when they want to get to know you, you got to take care of yourself. Yourself, your little you, your 6-year-old you, your 11-year-old you, your I'm tired of this job you. And that can come in the form of having a therapist, having a good pal, having a group. But make sure even during your busiest time of the year, you have somebody that you can talk to. So you're letting out that steam somewhere that's productive. When we are being productive, we're also following through. Some people have a little harder time doing that. Let your staff in on that, but also like get the post-it notes, have a buddy that can help you out. And when you're like trying to have like a little bit of a tough time with your staff, you know, lead with empathy. The story I'm telling myself is a great sentence that you can use and give. I like to give credit, and that goes to Diane Dubé. I'm really grateful that I got to do the show with Kate today and Ruby by proxy. And that was our recap on this show.
Nailed it, as usual. Loved it. If you would like to get involved in Camp Code, tell us your thoughts on this episode. Use the hashtag Camp Code on your favorite social media of choice. You can also tell us what topics you would like Beth and Gabs to discuss. Any guests you would recommend we have on the show. Maybe you recommend that I come back because I'm great.
Yeah.
What great leadership team tips do you have to share? We'd love to hear from you. We're all about sharing in this industry. Also, if you found this podcast useful, please leave a rating and review us in your podcasting app. Your feedback helps keep the show going. Gabs, if people want to contact you, how do they get in touch?
Well, they can reach out to info@waro.com and they can check out where I work at waro.com.
And if folks want to get in touch with me, I am Kate at stephanrichard.ca. You can check out stephanrichard.ca if you want to see my beautiful bio on the
Yeah.
website. This week's best practice comes from Carrie Lawson at Camp Sealth.
Ooh.
We had an amazing opportunity a few weeks ago now, to do Shiro talks with the Women in Camp Leadership, the Women in Camp Summit. We did a virtual event to bring more people together than just the folks who could make it to Chicago. And Carrie was on the call, and she mentioned that at Camp Sealth, they have started to move away from the term inclusion towards camper support. So this takes away a bit of the stigma that has started to grow around the word inclusion and started to be really applied as a label to kids that have different needs. Every kid has different needs, actually, and
Yeah.
every kid has some kind of support need. So the staff that are on the camper support team are basically project managers for any kind of camper support problem solving that needs to happen around camp. And it doesn't have to be limited to just kids with a diagnosis or a assumption of diagnosis.
Awesome.
Camp Code is a part of the Go Camp Pro podcast network. Check out all of our other podcasts at gocamp.pro/podcasts. Thank you for joining us today. If you have questions or want us to dive deeper into any part of this, please reach out. We're here to help you create the best staff training possible. Until next time, keep making camp a place where young people grow, not just campers, but staff too. Thanks for listening, friends.
Camp Hacker, bringing your world into focus.